Hey everybody, welcome to the Drop the Beat podcast. My name is Will Sarver.
And my name is Charles Laurita.
And we want to thank all of you for listening to us beat off.
Oh, that was a really super solid intro. I'm so proud of you for that. That was great.
I practiced before.
I was going to say, good. Hey, I was going to say, this is our fourth episode so far, and I know you and I are both incredibly appreciative for everyone beating off with us every single week because we have nothing to do in quarantine except just talk to each other and beat off.
It truly means a lot to us, and it makes the time go by.
I was going to say, so update for anyone wondering, because you can't see us, we both look like hell. I was just saying to William, I look like what I'd imagine Jack Sparrow's poop to look like. It's just garbage.
But I got hair down to my shoulders.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look like Jesus. That's cool.
Yeah.
Me with the pirate look. I have the parrot on my shoulder and the eye patch. It just really, really sells it. But it's
do you have to
nice.
wash?
So hopefully
do you have to wash that eye patch?
Do I wash the eye patch?
Yeah. Do you have to?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just like any other face mask that we're using. I have to, after a while, they're disposable and I get new ones.
Yeah, I didn't know if you're wearing it all week along with your sweatpants.
Oh, no. These sweatpants are seeing a good month at this point.
All right, yeah.
Eyes are different. I don't want to get pink eye, and who knows where this eye patch has been. But enough about bad things in my eyes. For those of you who don't know about the Drop the Beat podcast, this is our long-form discussion of topic podcast with anything ranging in the music industry and just music in general, with questions submitted by you guys. Will, did you know they could actually submit questions for this show?
You know what? I heard that they could, but where do you get this information from?
Will, have you even been paying attention for these past 3 weeks? Because I've literally said it every single time. But here's a little refresher for you just in case, bud. If you'd like to submit a question for us to discuss in a long format kind of setting here, go to www.charleslaurita.com/contact. Whatever you're watching this on, whether it's just audio or video on YouTube, there's always a link in the description. And submit a topic, put your name, tell us where you're from, and it'll be something pretty fun for us to talk. And you can hear us discuss this. I think we have a good one today, actually.
Oh, I'm sure it's a dandy one.
Yeah, people have been sending in some bangers, which is pretty crazy. But this one comes from Jackie M.
Okay.
And she is all the way from Massachusetts. Wow, I could not say that. That was horrible. That could have went really bad. Sorry, so sorry, Jackie. Jackie M from Massachusetts. And she writes in, and she says, I've been playing piano for 17 years now, and I'm completely self-taught. I've been thinking about starting lessons and wanted to know if you guys had a preference between self-taught or formal lessons. Thank you guys. Loving the show. So thank you, first off, Jackie, for this sweet compliment.
For real. But we appreciate it.
We are getting hit with such deep questions every week now. They're just these existential, oh man,
they hit home.
They really do. This is a good one, Jackie. Jackie from Massachusetts, which I almost butchered horribly. That's a great one because I think we talk about this all the time, especially myself being a private music instructor or music teacher. Instructor makes me sound strict. I'm not. I'm
professional.
Yeah, professional. I put air quotes.
Not us.
Yeah, no. That's a great question because that can go in so many ways, especially if you look at any musicians just in general of what their backgrounds are. Now, I know I learned music through formal lessons for the most part. What about you, William? What was your kind of musical upbringing?
Yeah, I guess I could say the same.
There's always an asterisk next to that because I know you and I guess we're formal, but definitely branched off from that kind of thing.
I think we're definitely both a hybrid of the two.
Yeah, definitely.
But for me growing up, my dad played drums, so that's kind of where I got a lot of the passion and the ability to do some of it. And in the beginning, it was a matter of him just kind of showing me what he knew. So, that's how it kind of started, and I started to get have a knack for it, and then it progressed
That's
into...
the best, though.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was definitely a natural progression, for sure.
See, that's always cool. I always relate something like that, which this outlook changed my view on music completely, is Victor Wooten, who is one of my favorite musicians, and just
man.
People in general, because I could just listen to that man talk for literally ever. And I went to a clinic a few years back at a local music store, and he literally played maybe 2 songs, and he just spoke the entire time. And that was cool because I learned that he was like huge into Marvel comic books, so that was really fun. And made me feel a lot better about myself for the time. But he had a really cool point where he said, and this was like completely eye-opening, and it's exactly you and your father's musical relationship, where he was like, music is a language. And he said, you learn so much better by playing with someone as if you're speaking the language together. Because how did you learn to speak when you were young? It's your parents didn't just give you a list of words and you go into a room for 30 minutes and recite them. No, you learned because you were around people speaking that language and you picked it up. And he's like, music is exactly the same. So that is literally you learning with your dad, where it's you pick it up because you're exposed to it in a positive kind of light. I think that's like incredible.
That's a really good way to put it. I mean, yeah, Victor Wooten's the man for anybody that's
he is
wondering. Check him out. But he's totally right, and that's kind of how it was. I mean, because I was so young, maybe 3, 4. It's like,
oh wow,
what else do I really know? Not much at that point. So really, it was exactly what you're saying. It's trying to learn. It's a form of communication. And you just do it by somebody showing you, or just listening and visually seeing it, and then it just progressed from there. And then it's like, I think he should probably start taking some lessons, because it stuck. I wanted to do it. I enjoyed it, and they tell me.
Did you continue doing it? Are you still doing it today?
I'm still doing it today. And
okay, good. I'm just making sure.
It's interesting because I was just talking with my wife about it, that I've always, for years, things come and go, and I end up, me personally, I ended up like, as far as sports and things like that, I dropped a lot of it. I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And I really thought back, really the only thing that has stayed consistent from pretty much the beginning of my existence to now was music and drums. That's the only thing that I've had and done consistently to this day. And honestly, it's been the hardest thing for me to do at some points in time, and some of the biggest challenges I've ever had. But at the end of the day, it still comes out the winner. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's great, though. I mean, I never really thought about that either. I think, what you were saying, the challenge is the best part about it.
Yeah.
I think that's why we constantly seek out things like that. Like, I had one of my students' parents the other day, because now, we're at home, so I'm doing online lessons, which is very, very weird. But one of my students' parents, he's a younger student, and his mother was like, "Oh, one day you'll be a master like Mr. Charles." And they do call me Mr. Charles, which is hilarious.
So much older now.
I know. And such a distinguished mustache. But Mr. Charles said, that because they called me, they said, "Oh, one day you'll be a master." And I said, "I'm not a master, and I never will be a master, and I'm completely content with always being the student." And the mom was like shocked, like her jaw hit the ground. And she's like, "Why?" And I said, "Because I feel like if you're ever a master is always something I feel like that's self-proclaimed." And I really feel, depending on which form of master you have, but I always feel like, if you're a master, you have done everything there is to know and play, thus there is no point in doing it anymore. And it's like, I learn something new every time I sit down to play.
Yeah.
And I'll never be a master. And I'll never be a master, and that's the most beautiful thing. Like, I watch people who bowl, and, they'll bowl a perfect 300 game every single time. And I think that must be so boring.
That's true.
Because
there's nothing else after that.
Yeah, there's no margin for error. What do you do at that point? I mean, it's not boring probably getting those giant,
checks
that they because
Yeah.
like that's cool, but
It's like, oh, I can get used to this.
yeah, I mean, obviously there's different versions of master. Like if you're a beast master and you can control any animal, that's kind of cool, but that's a different form of the word. Or a Pokemon master, but we won't get into that because I don't want people to unsubscribe from us. But no, for me, it's always there always is a difficulty curve because I'm always pushing and learning. So I think that kind of goes back to what you were saying, where it's sometimes fairly difficult, but you still do it because it's what you do and what you know. It's a part of you. Like you couldn't not,
Right. Exactly. So, and that's the beauty of it. And I feel the same way, and I still am always trying to learn something new. I'm never content or satisfied with my playing.
I would say that's the artistic, the perfectionist nature, which we both share, and it's either our best friend or our worst enemy. I know that for a fact.
Absolutely.
So,
but
how
that's
old
the
were
exciting
you?
part? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say, how old were you when you started taking actual formal lessons, and what was that kind of comprised of?
It's hard.
Digging back in those Borg memory banks, I know.
Yeah, the age.
Or if you had to guesstimate what it was.
If I had to guess, oh man, I'm sure that I'm wrong.
God, I'm a big lame-o because I remember everything. I remember it was August 14th, 2001. That was my first lesson.
Not me. I want to say
sorry.
maybe I was like 6 or 8, somewhere in that range. If I had to guess,
that's still pretty early though, because usually it's the beginning instrument is always like piano, or it's any of the instruments offered in school.
Yeah. All right. No, you know what? It was 8. I know that for a fact. Because I took lessons from the same individual for 10 years, and I stopped out of high school. So, yeah,
nice.
that math works.
Go.
So, yeah, 8. God, I'm terrible at math, FYI. But
so that, if my math is correct, you took lessons for 18 years.
yeah. So, yeah.
That wasn't even funny. I don't know why I laughed at myself. I'm so sorry. I just feel
I
bad.
only laugh so I could get a raise, but
yeah, that's coming. Just keep checking for that one.
Yeah, it's delayed, I'm sure. So yeah, I was 8 when I took my first formal lesson.
Now, did you do any of the instruments offered in school, or did you do band in school? Or were you, so you did, okay. Because they don't necessarily teach you in school. It's always just they teach you how to play together, or they teach everyone to play at the same time. They never necessarily give you lessons. Like I did orchestra in school, and I remember because I had because you could start in 3rd grade with either violin, and then in 4th grade you could do band with like brass and woodwinds and percussion. And I remember listening in 3rd grade to the violins and cellos and everything, and they just sounded way better than the band did. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do that one. And my that was a big deal for me because I wasn't even going to do music like at all. So me being in 2nd grade and being obsessed with the Spice Girls, they got me to do music.
They forced you.
Because my mom was like, what do you think about maybe doing orchestra? No, orchestra's kind of dumb. And this was back in like Spice World Mania was happening, so it was always, they got a new music video on TV, and like the news would debut a new Spice Girls music video. And I remember like they had a concert one time, a live televised concert, and they had an orchestra with them. And I was like, that's it. Got to do violin now because they're going to definitely want little 3rd grade me to play with the Spice Girls. And that's what
100%.
got me to... No, of course, I know. I was waiting for I never got the call. I think, back then, long distance was really tough from the UK. But no, that got me into it. And my orchestra teacher, Mr. Mercury, was the absolute man. Also, that's the coolest name ever.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But he was an incredible player. He played everything. He played, fine strings. He was an incredible guitarist. He did banjo, mandolin. He did every bluegrass instrument. And I remember when I was stopping violin because I only played from 3rd grade to 5th grade, I told him I was going to start playing guitar. And he was like, I play guitar. And I remember he pulled it out and started playing, and he was just incredible, just finger picking stuff. And he taught me to read music, and that was a really, really important thing for me because not that I read every day recreationally, it does have other uses for me, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's good. So I was orchestra, you were band, which, the band kids were cooler and the orchestra kids were a bunch of dweebs.
Oh, yeah, we were so cool.
You guys were like the jocks, man.
Yeah, but yeah, I was in the school music program from the beginning. As like, as early as you can do it in schools when I started.
Yep.
And I never got out of it.
So neither did I.
I stayed true to it. But like you said, in elementary school, it's really not so much lessons.
No.
Because the person that was directing, the band and also like doing my quote unquote lessons, was not a percussionist. So
that's how it always is.
Yeah.
That was me in middle school, going into middle school playing guitar, wanting to play in the school band, and saying, "Oh, I want to play guitar," and like, "Oh, we don't need a guitar, we need a bass." And I was like, "Shit, I don't play that." And they're like, "Well, it's pretty close to guitar." And I realized I didn't know anything about bass clef, and I had to teach myself, and that was horrible. And I was not a fan. But
now
then
you
obviously,
like it.
I adore it, and I read bass every day. God, in middle school and high school, because that's all I did for band. It was all bass stuff, which was great. Obviously, I read treble, no problem too, but bass, it was just a cold read kind of thing, like that.
Yeah.
But that I taught myself, because I think for you and I, for creative as we are, even though lessons are super super important, I know, God, just teaching yourself and kind of playing around with it is just equally as important, because that's how you kind of learn.
Yeah,
Unless
I
it's just
agree
me,
with that.
but I don't think
no,
so.
No, I agree 100%. Having the lesson structure was great, but also part of it is you have to figure it out on your own and see how things work out for you, and everybody's different. So, like especially for drums, it's like you're gonna have 10 people lined up, and they're all gonna hold the sticks differently.
That's true.
Everybody's body is different. Everybody's gonna, but
that's a good thing, though. I mean, unless
exactly.
you're looking for uniformity, but I always thought that was kind of nice.
That's like drumline.
Teaching-wise. Oh yeah,
yeah.
For me, teaching-wise, there's a lot of things I don't mess with, because sometimes there's proper technique and then there's individual style, and style for me was always important.
100%.
Because there's so many players that we look at, whether they've taken formal lessons or not, and they have their own little quirky style. Like the one guy I love is Jeff Beck, and
I've heard
him
of him.
guitar-wise. Him guitar-wise playing, he plays with his thumb for like everything, and it's really weird,
Right.
but like it's awesome. Or like one of my favorite bassists is James Jamerson, who's one of the Funk Brothers, and he played bass with one finger for everything, and it's like no one would dare mess with technique like that when you literally have hands of gold. But I think there should be a good balance of like a formal lesson as well as kind of just messing around and learning the instrument yourself, because you're kind of learning yourself through the instrument, if that kind of makes any sense. Like I had a friend who was an incredible piano player, and she only ever read music. She never improv at all. She never knew what she was playing without the sheets. So I'd be like, "Oh, let's just kind of play. We're going to play these chords." And she's like, "All right, what are the notes?" And it's like, come on. Like there is a point where there's got to be like an equal balance of both. I don't know if you've ever experienced that with anybody.
Yeah,
playing wise.
I mean,
because it can be a hindrance, which kind of is a shame. But
for sure, and I think the first time that type of scenario struck me was when I started to study and play jazz.
Yep, that'll do it.
So, and it does become a problem in that scenario when a lot of it can be freeform and more improvised, but you still have somebody's head in the page. So
yeah, that's true.
In that aspect, it's difficult because they're not particularly listening to the other musicians around them. And that is everything in that type of playing. So in high school, when like I really started getting into jazz and started doing it, we worked a lot on getting your head out of the page.
That's incredibly important, yeah.
So it was a matter of, understand what you have to play, practice it, be prepared, and now don't look at it. You know what to do, so now you just have to listen to everybody else and play along with them, play off of them. It's yet again a form of communication, and that you're trying to have a conversation.
Is the biggest part.
100%. And I know in my playing, it's all listening when I play, and it's not to myself. I know that may come as a surprise to people, but I don't listen to myself. I'm the last thing in my head when I'm playing, because I'm focused on what everybody else is doing. I'm trying to listen, and I'm trying to gel and feel everything and play off of each other and have a conversation and commute with everybody that's around me. So,
well, that's like whenever we play, I'm listening to you in the bass. That's the most important thing for me, is the rhythm section like that, and listening what we're doing for all three of us to be together. And it's crazy because that's not something that's taught, but it's definitely learned, and that usually is only learned from doing it.
Right.
And I think that's just incredibly important, because there's a ton of things that you do learn from formal lessons, but there's a lot you don't learn, like for stage performance and just presence on stage and playing along with others, or gelling, or playing with feeling. There's a lot of that. You can read every book on it in the world, but unless you actually are hands-on doing it, or you're up there doing it, or playing with other people, that's important. And the big rule we always had musically growing up was you always want to play with people better than you. Whatever
I was just thinking about
definition.
that.
Yeah, whatever the definition of better than you is, because that's how you. And I remember that one of my friends saying, one of my music colleagues. I say colleagues. This is me when I'm like 16, 17. But colleague being 2 or 3 times my age, saying, one of my mentors, he was like, you start to become really good when you play with other people, and it's kind of like all the formalities you learn from lessons are kind of pushed to the side, because it's a completely different sport. I wouldn't say it's not, out of the ballpark. It's a completely different sport at this point. So you're going from badminton to backgammon, the two manliest sports I could think of off the top of my head.
Right.
But, that's such a important thing. But I mean, for me, getting to that point did have a lot to do with formal lessons, because there were a lot of things I used to kind of influence my choices and experience from that kind of stuff. Like, obviously reading, and it was important because now it's like, okay, I'm playing with horns and I'm writing their parts. I need to know my shit. I need to know my theory. I need to know how to write this stuff.
Yeah.
That's a practical use of that for me that I did learn formally. Because a lot of my kids, they don't want to read. And I always say, well, here's a real reason that you can use this in the real world. This is an applicable use for that. Or theory, if I'm teaching any kind of like jazz theory or classical theory or chord theory stuff, it's always like, this is how I use this. One of my biggest uses for theory is, I'm writing a song and I cater to my voice when I write. That's the most important thing for me, in the least conceited way possible, because I don't want to sound like dog shit. So I always will transpose it into a key that suits my voice the best, where it's a kind of comfortable range, pushing a little bit of the high end. And I learned, the theory stuff from school, and then I ran with it though. So I learned the basics of it, and then I kind of pushed it. And I never wanted to learn the rules, because I was like, oh, this is dumb. I don't want to learn the rules. But then you realize, man, there's so much you can do with it. It's almost more so it's like, here are your paints. And that's what you get from lessons, this great array of paints. And it's not, dude, you got to paint the picture. Like, they don't do that for you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to describe it. And I agree with
it. Well, if it's the art vibe, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just me.
No, I mean, I think the foundation is great to have, and it is important to know. And, me starting out, I was one of those that I don't want to read. I don't want to learn how to read music. Just want to play. But I fought it for a while, but it was important that I learned it, and I did learn it, and it did help me in the long run. Because once you understand how to do all that and have your foundation, then it becomes second nature.
Good point.
And
Very good point.
Now you are at a different level where you know, you don't have to think about that anymore. Like somebody can give you music right away and you'll play it no problem, and now you can read it, like subconsciously read it. This is hard to describe. Subconsciously
No, that makes sense.
read it, but you can now enjoy playing it, and you're listening while you're doing it at the same time, because you
don't have to
understand.
think about it, right?
Exactly. You don't have to think about the notes on the page, because you can just visually see it, and you know how to play and how to read it, because it's second nature. And that's when it kind of clicked for me that, oh, I get it. You know, I understand it, and I'm glad that I did. And it's, you know,
But that's good for you because you used it how it was necessary for you. And it got to the point with you where it's like, you know, yeah, you get it, you understood it. It's a nice paint for your palette, but you know, you paint with it a different way. And that's awesome. Like, that's a great way. Because I mean, for me, I was thankful that I did orchestra before I went to guitar lessons, because orchestra for me, I had to read music. I was forced to do it because that's the only way you play with everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that was nice because that did teach me a lot of the fundamentals of it. So if I ever have to speak it or teach it myself, it's like, okay, cool. And then when I got to guitar, it was obviously I was being taught, you know, reading, you know, more intense reading and scales and chords and all that kind of stuff, and theory here and there. But I think once it all kind of came together for me, branching off and starting improvisation, it was kind of, yeah, I have the ideas of reading and things like that, and I'm still using them, but not in the proper way. It's, you know, like, I have them, I understand them, and now I'm going to do me. And yeah, I'm kind of taking a little piece of each one, even if I'm not, you know, even if I'm not reading music every day. Like, that's one of my students hated reading so much, where he would just read the piece once and then just memorize it.
That is 100% me.
But that's such a good skill, because if you're stuck in that page, like you were saying, and subdividing and counting every rest, we've worked with players like that, where it's like, you know, you're in there, you're so subdividing every rest, but you can sing this part to me. You shouldn't have to read it. Yeah, maybe use it as a roadmap to know what notes, but don't subdivide and count every 16th break and rest and things like that. You know, like, I have one of my students' parents. You know, the kid refuses to read, and he's younger, he's 7, so it's kind of like, yeah, I would like him to, just because he can, you know, use this someday on his own, in whichever means necessary. But the dad was like, you know, please tell him how you read music every day on stage with your band. And I looked at him in like this, like the best face.
Man.
I was like, dude, I never read on stage. I memorize literally everything. Everything I do nowadays is based tonally, and, you know, learning by ear. Not that I don't know how to read, but it's one of those things where it's like, I can just listen to music and I know what it is. Or I'm in the car and I hear a song and I'm like, I know what this chord progression is now. I know this song. And a lot of that came from ear training, from just reading and playing. So yeah, that and understanding where things are on a staff and how the intervals work and everything like that. So again, I took those skills from formal lessons and made them work for me, kind of like how you did with everything.
Yeah. It's
I mean, there's always pros and cons with all of that kind of stuff. I mean, there's so many practical things you can do with learned skills like that, though. You know, and just how you decide to use them.
It's funny that you mentioned that that person that just memorized. You know,
he's great for being 7. That's awesome.
Oh, that's great, because that's, I mean, that was me, and still is. But you know, I struggled big time. Reading was always a struggle for me. So like, when I'd have to play like a mallet piece, you know, it's like several pages long. Well, I wasn't able to read and play it at the same time. I couldn't connect the two. I mean, if it was a drum set part, you know, different ball game.
Were you doing 2-stick technique or a 4-stick?
4, but both. But I had to learn 4 and.
See, reading that's really tough, though. And then having to watch where you're going, you know, which is on essentially the giant piano. Who would want to read and play that? That's very tough.
So what I ended up having to do was just completely memorize it, because that way I can visually look at my hand and see what I'm playing, because I could not look at the music. So when I was practicing it, I would just have to take it section by section and memorize it completely. So
Yeah.
when I go to perform or for a grade or whatever, they're like, "You didn't look at the music one single time." I was like, "'Cause I
said,
can't."
"You bet your ass."
Yeah.
No, but that's even better though. You walk into an audition or something like that, and your head's not in the sheet, and you're just memorizing it, and you just know it.
Yeah.
Now you can just really focus on your playing. And for those of you at home who don't know what a marimba is, it's almost like it's a xylophone, but the biggest possible one you could have. Like it's literally the giant. It's literally the giant FAO Schwartz piano that Tom Hanks jumps around on in the movie Big. It's pretty much one of those on wheels.
They're pretty awesome.
Each one of and they're super cool for mallet. I'm assuming when you said mallets, it was for marimba.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like these things are the size of a massive dining room table. And as opposed to regular piano keys, it's they're these giant like 3-inch wide big plates you have to hit with a mallet, and it's like I don't think I could read that and play at the same time. I'd have to be looking at my hands. Like that's not something I would feel comfortable on.
It was difficult, but if I spent a little bit more time and really learned it properly, then it would have been easier for me. But I just done a lot of things by memory, but but like you were saying, like a lot of that can't be taught in formal lessons. It's you just have to experience it, and that's part of it. But let me ask you, so on the other side of all of that, what's your take on somebody completely self-taught?
There's pros and cons for sure. And it's funny because I teach. I've been teaching for 14 years now, and it's I'm not completely advocating for lessons. I'm not against people learning themselves. Now, I don't know Jackie writing in if she is older or not, or if she's younger or what have you. But going into starting lessons is always interesting like that because you and I both know a lot of players who are self-taught, never read.
Oh yeah,
no theory per se, just from playing it because they know what works or know what sounds together, and they know their notes, they know their chords, they know this kind of thing and that. There can be some hindrances here and there. Like I know you and I have worked with some players in particular where we'd be rehearsing and self-taught would be trying to play something they've heard from one of our songs, and it's easily found within a shape on the neck, like we're talking about specifically like a bassist. It's a good example.
Yeah, and the neck of a bass, not a neck of a person.
Yeah, not the neck of a person. That's like some Jeffrey Dahmer stuff. We're not getting into that in this episode.
Yeah, not this episode.
No. But and they would play a pattern, and I'd be like, "Oh, you could play this a lot easier if you just use this shape." Or they might not know where all the notes are on the neck. Or playing something together was like, "Oh yeah, some of these chords are not necessarily in the key, and they don't work." Or this, so there are hindrances in that regard where it's like, they're things that you and I take for granted because we do it every day and we do it so damn much. But to someone who's completely self-taught might not know that. Now they can get around and they can play and they can keep up for the most part, but they're things that you and I would look at as simple, where someone who has never taken lessons before or never had proper instruction would never really think about. Or it's like you and I speak a lot of times in like theory talk. Like I'll have a chart I'll give to you or something. I'll be like, all right, so it's going to go to the 2 to the 5 and resolve back to the 1, and you're going to fill into the 1, and it's going to be on the and of 4. And it's like for anybody listening,
it's another language.
To the crazy like jive turkey shit I just laid down, would have no idea. But it's like you and I doing lessons, and especially school band and things like that, we understand that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a good point. For you, working with the vast amount of people that we have, whether it's for session stuff in studios or musicians in our group or anything like that, thankfully, for the most part, we've been blessed with always having, guys who really know their shit play with us, which is good. We've had a couple here and there, and that's more so who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Don't play with the groups anymore. It is tougher when you're in a crowd where everyone kind of walks the walk and talks the talk, and you have the odd guy out trying to learn, and it's where it's like, okay, keep up, hit the ground running kind of a thing. And not in a dickish way, but it's kind of like, yeah, you really need to know this kind of stuff because we can't teach this whole time.
Right.
I know you and I have experienced that.
Oh, yeah, plenty of times. And it's like, we have shows scheduled. We have events scheduled. It's like, we don't have all the time in the world to, go much slowly and trying to, relearn things and teaching somebody. Yeah. It's like, sometimes it's like, we got to, like for me, when I first started in the band, I was like, I just auditioned, and then, several days later, I had 2 gigs in a row.
Yeah.
It's like,
you hit the ground running was an understatement at that point.
It's like, we didn't have time. There was no time for you to like hold my hand as I tried to learn the stuff. No, I came in prepared and I learned as much as I could.
I mean, for you, it wasn't even like you had the training wheels off. God, you were on a unicycle. Like that's how
I wish
crazy
I could ride
it was.
one. Yeah.
That would break my teeth. But actually, that's the stupid as I said unicycle. That's the one little analogy I make to all of my students with reading music or practicing or playing. I always say it's like, yeah, you could ask me to ride a unicycle right now and I would fall down and break my face. But if I did it every day, I'd probably break infinitely less teeth and I would get better at it.
Yep.
You can't do it now because you've never done it before.
Yep.
But enough about me when I was in the circus before I was adopted by my parents. You came in and hit the ground running, and I've never had to teach you anything. It's just you get it, and whether that's just your own kind of ingenuity taking over, or whether it's an amalgamation of your personal playing versus things you've learned from lessons. Who knows what is coming together? Because at this point, you're not really questioning that. It's just pistons are firing, and it's just go. And you just do, and that's the number one thing. It's whether it's music lessons from school, from an instructor, from college, whatever. It's the number one thing I always say, can you play? That is all that I care about. I don't care about instructional background. I don't care about any of that stuff. Can you play? Do you know the stuff? And that always matters most to me because I've had people who come in, we've worked with, who are always like, I'm a music major, I got this big degree, I got that big degree, I got this big degree, whatever, wash Buddy Rich's feet. And it's like, okay, great, good. Can you play? And it's not. We've had people come in who couldn't read anything, barely know the names of their strings, and they are fantastic players, and they can just do it,
Yeah.
They could speak the language without reading the language, and that's always super important. Because I always say, like, the communication more so is important than the reading aspect of it. Because it's like, yeah, you can read this menu, but can you order anything from it? That's always important for me because I'm a big fatty fat and I like my food.
It's like we just want, at the end of the day, you just want to, you want to hear him play. Can you play it? How do you, how does it sound? How does it feel? And
and I don't care how you get there, as long as we can make it work.
100%.
I mean, obviously, if there's some discrepancies where it's kind of like, we need to get to this, and this was something that's easily learnable, and you don't kind of know, being a self-taught thing, that's a problem too. But then we've also, you can just, if people just get it, they get it.
Yeah.
That's important. But like I always say, there are always lots of, impressive things that you can get out of formal learning. Because I wasn't crazy about reading music either. But I'll say, my high school now hires me back every single year to play in their pit band. I play bass or guitar with them, and that's cool because I'll go in for rehearsals, and they'll drop the book in front of me, and I'll do a couple rehearsals and like 6 shows, and that's a great paycheck. And it's literally, I have to come in and know the music immediately, and I have to just cold read it and just go. And that's important because that's me, reading music. And that was, a skill I learned from instruction. Obviously, now I got better at it, doing it over time. Because that was just me putting in the time to practice. Or like another great one I had was I do a lot of studio session work, and I had this one gentleman, he was a sax player, and he hit me with literally just a sheet of all just Roman numerals, and it was just the chord symbols. And so instead of it was like for like the big theory dorks listening, it's always, your 1, your 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the chords in a key. and he would just say, okay, we're going to do this in 4 different keys, and it was all sax keys. So he's like, we're going to do it in A flat, D flat, B flat, E flat. It's going to be a walk at 220 BPM. Are you okay with doing that? I don't know which one we're going to pick. So, and it was just a sheet of Roman numerals. And it's like, good thing I knew my theory for that, or I would have shit myself in that studio. And it was scary, but it worked. And that was something, I learned a lot from instruction, but I also learned a lot on my own because I got really into theory when I got into writing. So that was like incredibly, incredibly important. And if I didn't know that, I wouldn't have gotten that gig or gotten asked back by him. So it's like, you can get some good paying gigs for reading well or being able to just jump in, whether it's just jumping in with reading or just jumping in with just playing in general.
Yeah.
And I know you've gotten some awesome gigs and opportunities from stuff like that too, whether it's just from your individual playing or from, more practical lesson kind of stuff playing.
Yeah, it's all, especially the studio stuff. I know
you've done a lot of studio stuff. So.
Yeah, I love the studio stuff. But, as far as like studio musicians go out there, like those guys are some of the best players out there. You don't even know their names, most of them. It's sad, but those guys can read because
yeah, they have to.
They have to. It's literally, you get called into the studio, they give you the sheet of music, whether it's fully written out or it's in, some sort of Roman numerals, or like, I know Nashville number system is a totally different system of writing things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's thrown in your face, and you got about maybe 30 minutes to look at it, and you're going to start, recording tracks. And
you can't mess up.
You can't mess up because somebody has already paid for the studio time. And every take is money. It costs money for every take if you have to redo things, if you screw up, whatever. So you really can't. So it's a matter, you come in, you read it briefly, talk it over, and then next thing you know, recording light is on, and you got to perform, and it's got to be perfect.
Yeah, and that's, but those sessions, they sometimes cost like $10,000 a session for how many players that you're paying, which is crazy. So hey, if that's an incentive for anyone to take lessons and learn to read, there you go. You could really make some serious money.
Absolutely. And then I'm sure there's also opportunities that they don't have to read anything. No. Someone might just play him a track and like, this is what I'm looking for, or someone will just like hum a tune and whatever.
Yeah, like you have someone come in and just lay a solo down, and it's like a lot of people for improv, you're not necessarily being taught that. And yeah, you're getting a couple riffs and licks and things here, but that's your own style at that point. Like I know people in my area who took lessons from my teacher, and they pretty much play like he does, where they'll kind of all have the same inflection and playing kind of thing. And obviously he's an incredible player, but it's like the individuality is kind of lost there. It's because they never really took the time to explore their own playing and their own style as far as improvisation goes. And you can't really teach that. Like, yeah, you can teach the fundamentals of soloing and the fundamentals of, scales and things like that go into it and playing over changes, but it's like that's all you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big important thing.
So it's I guess like what you could take out of, some of this is, I think it's important to be all, as well-rounded as possible, just in the fact that
yes,
you don't know what situation is going to be brought to you. It could have been any of the things that we mentioned before.
You have to be a musical Swiss Army knife.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you have to have all the tools at your fingertips, and you got to be ready to perform. And this is if you're trying to pursue a career in it. I think it's even more important, but like I said,
you never know what you're going to get hit with.
You honestly don't know, and it's a phone call can come at any time, and the opportunity of a lifetime can come at any moment, and you have to be ready, because if you're not ready, the next person in line is going to take it from you. So
that is very, very true. I think too. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying that that's why I know, at least I do, and I know you definitely do, is we try to be as prepared as possible in every aspect. I'm always learning, no matter what, if it's lessons or self, trying to teach yourself. I'm always doing it. Like,
It's practice, practice, practice.
It's practice. I've taken lessons for so many years, and I still to this day, like, I get the urge, and I probably will at some point when all this blows over, is I probably want to take lessons from somebody. And it does, you know, some people might think, oh, you're crazy, I don't need to take lessons. It's like, well, I can improve on what, you know, my playing. You can always improve. But everybody brings something different to the table, and it's just nice to hear somebody else's approach. You might learn something crazy. You've never seen it before by, you know, anybody. You know, go online. I'm learning stuff all the time just watching people play and listening to people play, and it's incredible that, like you said earlier, it's like it's impossible to master. You know, you're always.
I wouldn't want to master it though. That's the thing. I
it wouldn't
always
be
want to
fun.
grow and keep learning. Yeah. That's the whole thing. Is a tree never gets to a certain point and stops growing. It always keeps growing. That's the whole point. Not that I know any trees personally, but that's what I assume.
Right.
You know,
yeah, they're pretty
I'm a
quiet
botanist
usually.
and nothing. Yeah, I can't get anything out of them. So I don't know, and that's kind of neat about you saying that about going back to lessons, because so many people are afraid to do lessons if they're older because they think that you have to be young to do this. I have a gentleman just signed up with me. I believe he's in his early 70s. Just signed up right before the quarantine hit. We had a couple lessons, about 2 months worth of lessons. And he'd been playing for years, doesn't read, doesn't know any of that kind of stuff, and he came to me because he wanted to learn theory.
See, that's awesome.
Jazz player.
That's great.
Really good player. He just doesn't know what he's doing. And I don't know if he was expecting to come in and the teacher to be infinitely younger than he, a third of his age. But I commend him for being brave and coming in. So I don't know if Jackie is, older than us or what have you, but definitely, Jackie, never be afraid to want to pursue lessons to better yourself or things like that. Because you can, again, it's not that when you take lessons that we're saying, all right, clear out your spice rack and we're putting all new stuff on there. No, it's more so it's like, here's a couple of hours we're going to add into that. I'm just going to keep thinking of stupid metaphors like that.
I like
should have
it.
said the paint palette one. Yeah, or it's anything like that. It's really what can you get from it and what can you do? And I mean, at the end of the day, practice is the most important thing.
Yeah.
With anything. I had a super rude awakening with that when I was younger because I got to middle school. I thought I was hot shit. I thought I played well. Girls were impressed by it. That was the only reason that I cared. And I had this little, I get to 8th grade, and this little 6th grade kid comes in, and everyone's like, dude, this kid can blow your doors out. And I was like, yeah, okay. And this kid was incredible player. And I remember talking to him, and I was like, and he's the sweetest kid, sweetest he could be, so, not full of himself at all, so humble. And I was like, how often do you practice? He was like, I play an hour every single day. And I was like, holy shit, an hour every day? This, me being like, oh yeah, I'll play for 15 minutes. And I'd look at the clock the entire time waiting for it to go by. So that summer going into high school, I played for 3 hours every single day, and I kept that up all the way into college. And I played for 3 hours every single day. And it would just be like an hour of just finger exercise, an hour of just scales, an hour of just bullshit, or just improv, or just whatever. And I would do a little of everything because I wanted to be the best version of me that I could be. And I think if to take away anything from lessons or anything from playing, it's my hardest thing and my biggest gripe is comparing myself to others. It's always just be the best you that you could ever possibly be. And I think that's kind of what makes it.
That's beautifully said. Absolutely.
I thought so. I thought that was kind of pretty. So, Jackie, hopefully we were able to kind of bridge that gap between the difference of, self-taught or lessons. Preference, and for her saying a preference, I think final answer for me is I don't necessarily think there's a preference, because if you can do what you do well and you're confident with it, not cocky or conceited, but you're confident and you can stand your ground, I think that's what's most important. Because sometimes lessons don't work for people.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people do need that structure of lessons. Sometimes people need that kind of a thing. I don't know, William, if you want to add something to that, but that's kind of my thoughts with that.
Yeah, I agree. I could say the same. I don't have a preference to either one because I am a product of both. And at the end of the day, it's some sort of education. You're educating yourself either way, no matter how you look at it.
That's very true.
It's whether it's lessons or self-taught, you're learning how to do it. I think the big takeaways and the things that I would try and focus on is like like Charles said, is consistency.
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, consistency and practice, and just play all the time as much as you can.
That's what it is.
All day, every day. Just get in as much playing as possible, and I really encourage trying to play with others.
Yes.
Often.
Yes. That is so incredibly important. And you will stretch yourself so much.
Oh, yes. And like you said, and if you can play with people that are better, I don't like to use that, but or older. I mean, that's how I grew up.
Or more seasoned.
Yeah, I grew up playing with people at least twice my age, but it was...
They're more fluent in the language.
Right, but
and that's fine.
You grow so much, and it's not just your playing, but also as a person and being a musician.
Just the musicianship in general.
Exactly, because that's a lot of it too, is being a good person, not only just playing, but just being a good person in general, because people will want to contact you, hang out with you, and play with you all the time, and that's important. So, moral of the story is, it's all good. Just keep playing, be consistent, learn as much as you can, and don't be afraid to try something new.
Will, I hate that every one of these episodes we end, you always say what I said, but so much more eloquently and just overall just better.
Yeah, so from here on out, it's just going to be me on this podcast. So it's
and
been
you made
fun.
me do a really ugly laugh. Thanks for that. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Drop the Beat podcast. I don't know if you guys knew. Will, I know you probably know by now. But we actually have a Patreon right now that you can support us and be one of our patrons. If you go to www.charleslaurita.com, right on our homepage, there's a big, gaudy, ugly, orange button. Doesn't match the site theme at all. And you can donate and be one of our patrons. It costs us... it costs you guys, it'll be only $1 a month, and we have some special things that kind of go with that, like your name is in the credits of videos, and we'll have some discounts in our merch shop and things like that. Did you know they can also submit questions, Will?
Did you mention that earlier?
Oh my God, were you even listening? I did. On that same website, you can go to charleslaurita.com/contact, and you can ask us any question music related that you would like us to answer in a long format on this show. With that being said, Will, would you like to sign us off of this bad boy?
Yeah, take care, goodbye. Is that it?
And we you
roll
that's
credits.
fine, or roll credits.
Yeah,
that's good. I would so thank you guys for listening to us beat off and beating off with us. This has been very very lovely for all of us, and once again, this is the Drop the Beat podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Take care.